Hello and welcome to Mandibil. This is sort of a small reflection on a recent video by Stefan Molyneux. And although I greatly disagree about much of his philosophy, and I think his book are, they suck like the bad philosophy they are, there are still a lot of things I agree with, but this is not sort of attempting to be a fanboy. I'm just, maybe I should remind myself and maybe you as a listener that it might not come across as differentiated opinion if all one can do is find negative things to say about those you don't agree with, right? Because then it can become a kind of sort of a vendetta, sort of, even though I would like to shut him up about his deeper philosophy, or his, pure philosophy, his abstract philosophy, whatever you want to call it, the sort of the base, clean kinds of philosophy. I'm not necessarily in saying that I wouldn't like him to be a proponent of sort of free markets and clear thinking and whatever, right? So this is also sort of a problematic thing, or something that is, it's still a problem with a guy like Stefan Molyneux, who sort of attempts to be a rigid philosopher while he has some sort of political and economic and arguments that are pretty decent in my opinion, right? But the underlying philosophy, which is not necessarily underlying, but he thinks it's underlying, right? Doesn't work. It's fallacious and badly argued, and there's all sorts of problems in his writings, right? So that's frustrating, because it would be nice if he both had some good opinions about, economics and social stuff and so on, and also had good philosophy. But I would think myself to be a kind of vengeful type if I would only find things I don't like about Stefan Molyneux and his philosophy and so on, and then focus purely on that, right? That would be a kind of so then I would be a sophist to some extent, right? I would try to make the focus on one particular argument, so to say, right? Rather than being differentiated and point out good stuff also, right? And one of the things he discussed in the latest video, though there were other stuff that I don't agree with, his thoughts about this feeling of plenty that creates the idea that you can just, solve every problem, because there are always we are so rich, there's so many resources, and why don't you the poor just need some more money, and then the problem is fixed and so on, right? You just need to buy another car and then just stop eating meat, and these quick fix solutions that possibly stems from the aspect he is arguing about, right? This welfare notion that there's just sort of an infinity of money, right? Then the state is some kind of magical entity that can hand out free stuff, right? That's a very, very dangerous idea, that there are some people, for some reason, they can just create free stuff, right? It's this magic word free, right? Yes, I want it to be free. It should be free for everybody. Everybody deserves to have this free stuff, right? Then they don't. It's it has to do with childhood also, right? And the educational or schooling system. you don't have to, when you're a child, you don't have to work for your food. You don't have to pay for your food, right? You don't have to do it. It just arrives on the table, basically, right? And your parents are out working, right? They believe in that free bullshit also, right? And that is also maybe why they possibly hate going to work, because they think, well, the government could make it free, so I don't have to work or something like that, right? And yes, who wouldn't want that? But then it's just somebody else paying, right? If you're not paying, somebody else is paying, right? Just because the state has stolen, gazillions of dollars or whatever currency you want to use, and having it a big, Doc McScrooge, isn't it called that in Disney, the wealthy uncle who's swimming in his money, right? It's like they have this big tank of money. You just have to hand it out to people, right? It can't be right that there are poor people when there are all these rich people. It's just not, it's not, distributed correctly. It needs to be distributed correctly because there is money enough for everybody. And what about these $43 billion that Elon Musk spent on, Twitter? He just spent them, right? Now they're gone. The money is gone because he bought, right? No, the money isn't gone, right? No, they're just in somebody else's hands, right? Those who used to have Twitter now have the money, and those who used to have the money now have Twitter, right? They're just switching. They're basically just, what's it called? Trick and trade? It's just a trade. Now somebody else has the money, right? Go ask them if they want to pay for the poor people or whatever you want, right? So there are so many fallacies built into this problem of people thinking about this free stuff, this fantasy, right? But what keeps the fantasy going is that those who are paying have been removed from the equation. They have been removed from any ability to argue that they are actually paying for the shit, right? And those who are receiving some of the money might also have been, receiving something, right? And maybe it's sort of a subconscious thing. I'm not really sure, right? I can think back on my own thinking before I sort of woke up. I'm hesitating to use the term woke, but before I was awakened, then one also have this kind of mentality, right? It's sort of just I guess it's a sort of weakness in human beings that they can't, connect the dots in this area, right? If you're susceptible to being manipulated in this direction. Oh, it's free stuff, right? Oh, it's free. But it's dangerous because there's always somebody paying, right? The more free stuff you get, the more somebody else is forced to pay or work for you for free. They're basically being enslaved, right? It's just a little convoluted as opposed to how slavery used to work in the old days, right? Now you're just sort of transferring people's created wealth, which is sort of stored in the money, right? And taking then and giving to somebody else, right? While those who's transferring the money is taking a cut for themselves, right? That's why they want that gravy train to keep going, no matter what the money is spent on, right? Unenlightened and stupid people being told that there are free stuff is atrocious, right? It's simply ridiculous to think that free stuff can arrive from somewhere just because your masters are involved in it. It's ridiculous, right? Even if your company, if you're working for some company, right? And there's something that they call free, right? It's not free. And very likely, if you don't know who's paying, you're probably the one paying for your own free whatever, right? In my company, there's a Friday free breakfast on Fridays, right? And you can just eat sort of what you sort of bread or cheese or fruit or whatever, right? But even though it's free, it's not free. Somebody created it, right? It didn't fall from the skies by its own accord. It landed there so you could just take it, right? Somebody produced it. Somebody spent time creating this, right? And if they didn't get paid for what they did, they are enslaved in order to produce that food that you created, right? But if they had to be paid, somehow the money has got to come from somewhere, right? And if you have a functioning company, it's not taking from. It's a part of the calculations, the cost and benefit from, expenses and income, right? Maybe the wages is slightly less because there's a free lunch, or there's a slightly lower quality of furniture within the company, or there's you pay a little more for this or that or the other, right? Maybe it's 3% more expensive to have the general food arrangement in the company, right? Which is very very common, I believe, right? So you're paying a little more over here, and then you're getting something for free over here. But the overall, because you're not sort of aware of how things are being moved around behind the curtain, it actually looks like from the outside that this Friday there's free stuff, right? Nothing is free, right? And it's very alluring to sell it to people as free, right? You don't have to worry about anything. We are the ones giving you free stuff, right? Vote for us. There are free stuff over here, right? Oh yes, I want free stuff. Oh, I'm going to vote for you, right? And not to be sexist, which I'm not. I'm not a sexist. I'm just seeing trends in how the world works, and it seems to be that women are very much more easily seduced by free stuff, or the notion of free stuff, right? And we could discuss why that is the case. But when you listen to people in general, it seems to be that it's mostly men who understands how economics really work, right? While women are more like, well, money is something you spend to have a good time, sort of. It's more prevalent. I'm not saying that women are stupid when it comes to economy, but there's sort of when I had a store back in sort of 7 years ago, I had a physical store, and I sold records, the old vinyl records, right? And there was a clear tendency that the men, my male customers, were very sort of focused on, okay, this price is too much for this particular record, and compared to the quality, it was sort of second-hand records, right? The quality of the vinyl, and it's scratchy, or the cover has this bend, or whatever, right? They were very sort of cost-benefit calculators, right? While women were more like, oh, look, in this record, we danced 2-3 years ago at that party, whatever, I heard with my, cousin, something like that. Oh, I want that. They just, I want this, right? So it's more like, well, that's what it costs then. So I just have to pay, right? So there's just, I'm being sort of simplistic about it, right? There were women who were very sort of, they wouldn't pay too much, right? And then it would tend to be just going for the cheapest, right? If you go for the cheapest price, you have a sense that you are, making a good deal, right? But that's not always the case, because you're buying cheap stuff, right? So cheap stuff is one of the most difficult things to value because it's cheap, right? And there's maybe a lot of it. Okay, but so there is a difference there, right? That is why that this idea of free has become such a prevalent argument in modern politics. It's all about handing stuff out to people, right? And handing stuff out to women, because they're the voters who want free stuff, or they don't understand that. And maybe it's also in the genes, right? Women have sort of, men create and women manipulate men so that they can get some of those resources, right? It's sort of a, and Stefan Molyneux also notes this, right? It's sort of it's a trend. It's not sort of clear cut, right? But there's a, right? Women are the shit testers, right? To get men to pay, right? They want men to have big cars. They want to invite them out to fancy restaurants. They want to buy them flowers. They want to buy this, buy that, buy the other, right? They want men to have money, right? So they can sort of get access to it by being their partner, right? I'm not saying it's wrong. It's how things seems to work. I'm not saying that it's moral or anything like that. I'm not moralizing in any way, right? I'm just trying to establish a trend, an idea of a trend, right? And if you're being attacked for saying things like this, well, it's possibly because it goes against the interests of those who want a majority of people to live in this fantasy, right? So it's a complicated issue that it has also to do with childhood, right? That you grew up with, you didn't have to work for stuff, right? And it is also like, I think, or I fear that a lot of people when they're young, they feel a job is sort of a duty you have in order to pay for society. You have to, then you sort of realize somebody's paying, and I'm going to be some of those who are going to pay for society, right? All that free stuff that the other people need, right? And then if you disagree or say, well, it's not correct that to steal from people, to give it to somebody else so they can feel that it's free, then you're being sort of, oh, but you got free school, right? And you got this and you got that free from older generations 10 years ago or 20 years ago, right? And then you're being shut up because you were forced into free stuff that you now can't reject because it is spent on you. You were forced to being spending free stuff, right? And when you grow up and realize that you were just being sort of a tool used to keep this fantasy of free stuff going, then you're sort of being lured into it, you could say, right? Lured is not, when we're dealing with children, they're not being lured. The children tend to do what they're told, sadly, right? Sadly. Nothing is free, right? It may be free for you, but it's not free. Nothing is free, right? I follow a guy on LinkedIn called Guy Kawasaki, who's sort of he used to be an evangelist for Steve Jobs, and he is sort of in that realm of startups and entrepreneurship and sort of these kinds of ideas, right? And he shared a link to a free school meals would be great, something like that, right? Free school meals would be great. Well, yeah. Well, how can you say no to this, right? If it's free, don't you want children to have free school? Do you want them to have, bad eating habits and so on, right? And it's free, it's just free. Why would you be against that, right? So you're lured into an argument you sort of can't get out of, right? And then you just said, yeah, I guess we have to support that, right? So these people get the taxation train going, because that's the real point, is that where there's a lot of things that the state finances, right? You could say it doesn't finance it, it just pays for it with money that's stolen, right? But if there's some part of the state that you're dependent on, right, you are more likely to support other kinds of transfer of money into free stuff somewhere, so that the gravy train can keep going, so that you can get what you need in some other part of the state transfer, right? So all these people who have become dependent on the state, they are not going to criticize the state. No matter what the state does, they will find some kind of excuse or just pretend that it doesn't exist, right? The whole military industrial complex and the central banking and, you know, money lending, and it's fucked up beyond recognition, right? FUBA. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's the world debt is at a level where I mean, God knows how this is going to end, right? It's not going to be pretty, right? And what is more important, those who are running the place, they are have a big interest in using some kind of crash of this whole economic system in order to get even more control at the other side of it, right? So these times are so freaking important. After 50 years of free stuff, everybody is indebted beyond recognition, and nobody seems to be able to see it anywhere. I mean, it's madness, right? Oh, it's just the future generation. They have to look into that. I need my pension, and I need my free stuff. I'm dependent. Fuck you, man, right? Pay for your own shit, or shut up, right? That's my point. So stick around in the Discord server. There are a lot of guys and gals discussing various interesting topics. You are more than welcome to join. Interesting discussions, and otherwise consider a donation. Links should be below. And share, like, and subscribe, and so on. And otherwise, have a nice day. See you next time.